Hello, Pastor Steve here in beautiful Visalia, California. This is Forgiveness Equals Freedom. And today we are on step 3 of what we call the Forgiveness Challenge here in our church in Visalia. And step 3 is actually forgiving. We're going to take a look today at what it means to forgive. We're going to take a look at some of the myths that people operate by that keep them from feeling like they can forgive. And we're going to look at the application of forgiveness. In this channel, I try to present a realistic view of how to go about the process of forgiving. In other words, how to go about the process of getting the darkness or the evil or the bad that was poured into us by someone or many other people and get it out of ourselves so that we can be open to enjoy better things in life. It's practical, it's realistic, and I think it will be fruitful for you. So let's dive in. We've talked about the first couple steps of forgiveness. The first step in forgiveness is to tell the story, and to tell the story is an exercise or a discipline that you have to go through sometimes a lot of times before it does its work. The end that you're hoping to come up with when you're telling the story, either writing it or telling it to another person, is to be able to tell it in such a way that you are including whoever harmed you as a full human being. In other words, that you come to be able to confess that a person who is made up of their experiences and may have turned dark or may have turned calloused, whatever the case might be, a person, a human being who has some kind of history that made them what they are, turned around and poured the harm that had been put in their life into your life. That doesn't excuse what they did. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be punished if they've broken the law. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be avoided going forward. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that a root cause of the ability to forgive is the willingness to see through a broader perspective the humanity of even people who have done really heinous and horrible things. It's easy to tell the story if it's somebody who you love and you got into a tango with them and they said or did some things that hurt you because you already had fully established their humanity when you ceded love to them. It's harder if the crime was committed against you by someone that you didn't know, or if you're in a recurrent cycle where one or lots of different people occupy the same place in your life and you're harmed over and over again. But it's necessary. If you want to be free from the damage and the pain that people inflict upon you, the first step really is to work hard at telling the story of what happened in such a way that you're including the humanity of the victimizer. The second step is to count the cost, to reckon with what your reaction should be, to think about not only what really happened, how broad spread is the damage that was caused, but also to really reckon with what would be the cost of not forgiving, what would be the cost of deciding you're going to pursue your own version of justice at some deep level, or what is the cost of holding it inside and grinding on it and letting that person and their actions occupy a central spot in your life. Well, the cost is pretty high. Because eventually whatever we put at the center of our thoughts and the center of our being, whatever we think about and plan for and pray about the most becomes our personal God. And the cost of unforgiveness is that in the case where you've been truly and deeply harmed by somebody, they can become the centerpiece of your life. You can begin to blame all the wrongs in your life on them. You can begin to make excuses because you've been so damaged, and you can begin to think about them incessantly, dream about them, talk about them, until really they have occupied the space that God should. That would be the greatest trick of the devil in the first place, right? To dupe us into making evil the center of our life instead of making grace the center of our life. So step 2 is counting the cost, right? Both the cost externally and the cost internally. And then step 3, when you've established the humanity of the person that harmed you or the people that harmed you, and when you've counted the cost and you've reckoned with the basic question, do I want to spend the rest of my life believing that this incident or these people have so inalterably damaged me that I can't have any good, I can't do anything except for wish ill on them? And when you have answered that question correctly, which is no, of course not. We don't want our enemies or people who harm us to be any more powerful than they have already been. When you come to that place, then it is time then to take the action that we call forgiveness. I want to address some of the myths about forgiveness before I plunge into what actually constitutes the act of forgiveness. And I think it's good to talk about the myths because they hold us back. One of the things that um, I am aware of more as I age in this life is that on the societal level, there are common truths uh, that most of us accede to or just take as obvious. And a lot of those truths are black and white, really concrete thinking, and they end up being harmful and really wrong when we implement them into our lives. That's especially noticeable on the topic of forgiveness. The things that we think about forgiveness are sometimes just absurd, and they, if they're accepted, they really can hold us back from pursuing forgiveness. So, a few of the myths. The first is that when you forgive, or if you're going to forgive, somehow you have to forget about what happened. The phrase is, right, forgive and forget. Well, let's be honest about how human life is. You will never forget, especially a deeply traumatic experience. In my life, I have had, like you, some people who I had dust ups with or whatever, and they irritated me or made me mad, but it wasn't really a big deal. But I've also had people who really made it their aim to harm me. They came after me and they did horrible things. And I will never forget that. That'll be a part of how I look at life and what I remember always. So it isn't the case that you have to forget what happened or somehow whitewash it and make it seem like it's all okay when it isn't. You'll always remember. What you have power over is how you remember it. You can remember and be triggered back into the emotional state when the injury occurred, right? Whatever injury it might have been. And in that case, remembering is really toxic for you because, again, it puts the person who did evil in your life at the center. But it's wise to remember in a non-triggering way. It makes us cautious. It helps us identify similar characteristics in other people that we'll meet in the future who might be doing the same thing. But it also is a part of the ongoing process of telling the story. Of course, you remember. So the idea that you have to somehow forget or it's make it so it's so unimportant that it's not a part of who you is absurd. Forgiving, oddly, has almost nothing to do with all the stuff I just talked about in this myth about forgetting or whitewashing or saying it's okay or understanding or coming to a different conclusion about it. Sometimes what you remember is that it was just pure evil and the person was out of their mind or they were living in darkness and what they did to you was wrong. You don't have to forget that in order to be able to forgive. The second myth of forgiveness is that you have to feel good about the person or you have to like them or you have to whatever love them or accept as valid their point of view of what happened. That's all hogwash, just absolute nonsense. It's crazy to me that again, societally, somehow in the West and in this day and age, we walk around, most people walk around with that idea of forgiveness. And that makes them say, if that's the case, I ain't ever forgiven. I'm never going to forgive them because I don't ever want to like them or love them. Of course you don't. Depending on the injury, if you were raped or molested or if you were beaten or in any number of really horrible violations of the human soul and body, you don't have to learn to like that person, and you don't have to learn to love them in order to forgive. In the first place, if you truly forgive them, that might come after forgiveness, and I'll make that make more sense here in just a few minutes. But the idea that the emotion precedes the action is an absurdity. In the sermon that I preached on this just recently here in the Visalia Church, the illustration I gave came from a gentleman named Fred Craddock, who was a great preacher in the 1970s and 80s. And the way he illustrated the principle that feelings should not determine our actions as Christians in gracing other people or forgiving them was this. He said, if that were a truth of human behavior, then when you have company coming over for a dinner party on a Friday or a Saturday night, you would wake up that morning and you would feel like the only thing you wanted to do in this life was to clean every inch of your house and to scrub the toilets and make sure the bathroom was presentable and to vacuum and to dust and do all the things that go into preparing your house for guests to come. But that's not how it is. Nobody wakes up and says, oh, I just feel moved in my spirit to clean my house today, every inch of it. What you do is you get up and you say, I need to clean my house today because I have company coming over. So in his illustration, he said, as a preacher who visits people, if I were to knock on your door about 4:30 and you were in the midst of vacuuming, your hair up in a do-rag and old clothes on and making final preparations, if as the preacher I stood there and said, wow, did the Spirit move you to want to clean your house today? You would say, no, get out of my way. I got company coming. I have things that I have to do because company's coming. That's the way things get done. And that's the way things get done in the church. That's the way things get done when we're disciples of Jesus. That's the way things get done when we come to the topic of forgiveness. You don't have to feel any inspiration to forgive. It is a rational, intelligent decision based on experience that brings a person to the point where they say, I want this stuff out of me as much as I can get it out of me. I want to open my heart and my spirit to the better things in life. And whoever did this to me is occupying way too much time. So I'm done with it. I'm going to forgive them. Now get out of my way and stop with I have to feel a certain way before I forgive. I'm going to forgive them, and then I'm going to try to figure out how to get on with my life. That is the actual proper order, because forgiveness is not an emotion. It can have great emotion attached to it, but really the act of forgiveness, it's an act of discipleship. It's an act of obedience. It's an act of willing ourselves to do what Christ clearly told us to do, even sometimes when we don't feel like it. So the third myth is that when we forgive somebody, we feel immediately better. It's all gone, and we're willing to pick back up with them, or we're willing to go on, and it's as if no harm was ever done. No, that's not how wisdom is accumulated. That's not how godly wisdom is accumulated. When you forgive somebody, you open the door to begin the path of feeling better. You open yourself up to the possibility of centering in your life the joy of being a Christ follower, of enjoying your family, I hope, and friends and nature and whatever occupation you're called to or that you've taken up. You open yourself up to those possibilities, but you still have work to do. Forgiveness then can be seen as a gate that has been closed, and you open it up through the act of forgiving, making possible a future in which you begin to fill the center of your life up with the things and the people that should be at the center. You move the people who have harmed you to their proper slot in life, which is to the side or to the background where they do much less damage and occupy less time. So let's talk then with that kind of introduction against the myths about what forgiveness is. And this might surprise you. It might shock you, and you might find yourself saying, I absolutely disagree. That right? I am not giving up the myths that we've created in our country at this time. I'm going to wait to forgive until I feel better about the person, until I can like them and love them, until God moves my spirit, and then it'll be an emotional high, and everything will be all better forever and ever. You can stick with that for as long as you want. God gave you free will the same as He gave me. What I report to you in this podcast and what I have experienced in my own life, that's not how it works at all. In small little things, if I tangle with my beautiful wife Marilyn over whatever petty stuff might go on, that's pretty much how forgiveness is. So we might go quiet for a little while, and then one of us will make a repair attempt, and when the repair attempt emotionally takes and the other person accepts it, then I do have a flood of feeling, and I'm happy and glad to be restored in relationship to her. That kind of forgiveness is easy because it's preceded by love. The type of forgiveness that I am specifically looking at in this series is rather more harmful and often done by people who we don't love, or if we did love them, we don't love them after it's done. So you can stick to the myth. You can wait until you feel that way. You can continue to let it be the center of your life and define who you are and how you are. It can become the reason that you lower your standards on your own conduct, right? I didn't mean to act like that, but I had this on my mind. You can do all the stuff that people do all the time. Never forgiving means that you are unable to receive in fullness the forgiveness of God. I don't say that as a theory. I say that because Scripture backs it up over and over and over again. It's the one great truth that comes out of Jesus' teachings. Let me give you an example real quickly. In the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses or sins or debts as we forgive those who sin or trespass or who owe us a debt. They're linked. They're linked in Jesus' teachings and the teachings of Paul and really the teachings of the New Testament. So the idea that forgiveness from God just happens because you say, I'm really sorry, please forgive me. Forgiveness is made available by Jesus. It's there for the asking, but it doesn't actualize, it doesn't fire up and become operative in your life. It isn't an agent of change for you until you learn to forgive other people, and that creates the space, kind of, if you see your body as the reciprocal of the soul, it creates space for that grace of God, the forgiveness of God to flow in as you're pushing the bad out by forgiving other people. And once the grace of God is in you in that way, it can do its work. So in forgiving, we open ourselves up to the fullness of the forgiveness that Christ offered us. So now let's just talk about the practical aspect of forgiveness. It's really simple, and again, it might fire you up, and you might think it's got to be more than that. That can't be right, but it is operative, and it is truthful, and it's worked in my life and in many other people's lives who I've talked to. Forgiveness, the act of actual forgiveness, the doing of the thing, looks like this. You say to God in prayer, God, I forgive this person. And as a part of that prayer, you then go on to be clear about what that means. So in my case, right, when I pray to Father. So I say, Father, I forgive this person for what they've done. I promise you that I will take no action against them. I will not seek to harm their reputation. I won't take retribution, even if it comes easily. It's just kind of served up on a platter for me. I'm going to leave this situation to you. You're the judge of me, you're the judge of them, and I know you will judge rightly. As for me, I'm giving you your throne back. You be the judge. You take care of it in whatever way is best for you. At the very least, I'm causing no harm to the person, even if I have the opportunity. And then I ask God to bless me with the ability to live into the promise that I've just made. It's a covenant that I'm making with God. And the covenant is relatively simple. I give up the pursuit of payback. I give up revenging in this situation. I give up the hope that if I could hurt that person like they hurt me, somehow life would be better. I turn it back over to you for judgment and for processing and whatever that means. And for me, I'm going to go forward in peace as far as that's possible. That's all forgiveness is. You make a covenant with God. You make a promise to God, which I hope is a serious thing for you, right? You shouldn't be shooting off promises you don't have any intention in keeping. And then you ask God to give you the courage and the strength and the wisdom and the memory to live out what you've promised. The way that it has worked for me, especially when the people that I am forgiving are alive and still in a position to harm me, is that making a promise to God, I'm not going to pay them back or revenge or harm them, right? If it's up to me, I'm doing nothing. I'm just going to walk away from the situation. When I have put it into practice, it has been amazing to me. It's crazy to say, but it's true. When I encounter the person who has harmed me the most, who happens to be here in this community, I gray rock them, which is a way of just going neutral and endure whatever nonsense they're up to that day. And when I leave, what I feel is not triggered into all the things they've done to me. What I feel is an incredible peace and a comfort in knowing God's going to take care of whatever God's going to take care of. I've even gotten to the point in my situation where I can pray that God will bless them so that they might come to understand the life that they're living and how horrible it is, and begin to make amends and right the ship. That's all I feel. I feel free from the past. I'm not trapped into seething and wanting bad things to happen to them. I don't want to show them up. I don't want to prove my point. I just want to get on with my life. And the sooner I'm out of their presence, the better I am. I'm not structured by my history or by the context that I grew up in to be somebody who runs from a fight or shows any kind of cowardice. It's just not who I am in person. And I don't read it as cowardice. I read it as great strength that God gives me, just simply to put that person in the right perspective. I'm going to worry or try to worry much more about how I'm pleasing God and how I'm acting in grace in the same way that I've received grace, than I'm going to worry about Yahoo that spreads rumors about me and has tried to harm me for whatever reason that they have inside of them. It's a powerful, powerful thing. So what is forgiveness? Well, it's a process in which you humanize the other person so that you can see them as a human being, and that makes you recognize some of the sin in your own life, and where you count the cost and you come to understand that revenging and holding a grudge and believing that your life can only be better if that person who has harmed you is harmed back, that's a falsehood. It's a wicked lie that will cost you much of your life if you don't check it. And then forgiveness is simply saying to God, as a believer, right, as a genuine disciple, not as the commander who dials up God and says, "Oh, dear Lord, you've got to do this and this and this," but as a disciple who learned from the Master Jesus and responds just as we have been trained and taught to do, which is to say, "I forgive them. I'm not going to do anything about the situation. I'm stepping away from it, and I want to get on with my life." You'll be amazed at how God will honor that prayer and at how you will be empowered to adopt the attitude and the heart set and the mindset that go with it, and be able then to reclaim your life and to live into a different way. Now, I want to say a quick word that's very important. It isn't revenge if you have to make a police report. And it isn't revenge if you have to go in and testify in a court, or if you have to talk in other situations at work or whatever about what someone has done. Revenge is a personal retribution for injury done, in the belief that in harming the person the way they harmed you, you somehow bring good about. And that's a lie. It is not revenge to work within a system that demands of you that you simply tell the truth. So it could be that you will have to show up somewhere in some situation and just tell the truth about what the person said or did or what happened. That's not revenge, doesn't go under that, and you're not excused from that task by forgiving the person. It just means that you're going to tell the truth, and whatever hopes you have that the person might get punished or whatever, you try to check that thought, because you have to check the lie. The lie always is, somehow, if this person pays for what they did, right? If they are hurt like I was hurt, it will make everything better. It won't make you better. It won't make them better. Check the lie, tell the truth, and be done with it. Forgiveness, then, is a covenant that we initiate with God in response to his clear taught word, which is the amount of forgiveness and grace that you can receive into your life is in some way equal to the amount that you are willing to faithfully give to those who, like yourself, are undeserving of such. Make the covenant with God. Make the covenant with God before you like the person. Make the covenant with God before you have any kind of feeling that precedes it. Make the covenant with God and let it be between you and God in the keeping of the covenant. Listen closely to what I've just described. The situation goes from you have a relationship with a person in whatever form that turns harmful to you. You carry that pain around, and you think that the answer lies in your relationship with that person. What we learn in the gospel and in the living out of the gospel faithfully is, no, God is way better than that. You don't get better by pursuing justice with that person or through the relationship you have with that person. You get better by pursuing your relationship with God, and in your relationship with God, centering on God instead of on the person that hurt you. Baby, that's power, right? That is how to be set free. That's why we call it forgiveness equals freedom, right? Once you're able to understand that forgiveness has to do with your relationship with the living God and not to do with somehow making the situation right through whatever means and your relationship with the other person, you're able to dismiss that person in a very real way and sideline them where they belong. Again, you won't forget about them. They're still there, and they might even be an ongoing danger, but they no longer are central in your life. And once they're no longer central and Christ is, I promise you, whatever circumstances you find yourself in, like Paul, who wrote from jail, right? It's crazy. Here I am in prison, and I should be miserable, but in Christ I find myself as fully alive as ever. That can be you. And the prison that most of us live in and jail ourselves in is unforgiveness. First 3 steps of forgiveness. Tell the story, humanize the other person. Doesn't mean you make excuses, you're just making them a human. Count the cost, realizing that the big cost of unforgiveness, the big cost of what happens to us when we grind on it and occupies center place for us, is that the person who harmed us in whatever way, they take control of our lives and they become the God that we serve, because we think about, pray about, talk about, dream about, plan about how we're going to get even to them. And if that's the case in your life, you've got the wrong thing at the center of your life. The third step then is to go to the one that should be the center of your life and simply to say, I obediently honor you by forgiving this person. And for me, that means not how I feel today or tomorrow, but how I'll act. I won't get back. I won't revenge. I won't buy into the belief that hurting them somehow makes my life better. It's a really important thing. And as I explain it, I hope that you have the same reaction that I've had as I learned it in real time. It's kind of crazy and beautiful to me how simple it is to take these steps, how very powerful it is. It erases the nonsense of the myths about forgiveness, about having to feel a certain way or love the person or like the person. You don't have to. You have to love God, and you have to be obedient to God. And when you do that, you engage a process in which His Spirit becomes operative in a unique and beautiful way, and He will then walk with you on that path of forgiveness. As temptation arises, you get the opportunity to pay somebody back or to say a snide word about them, whatever it might be. He'll help you live into the covenant and the promise you made. And in doing that, He is helping to restore your life to what it should be. It's important to forgive, if for no other reason than the human being who did whatever they did to you should not be the soul and center of your life. You're giving them too much power. They're broken and oftentimes just simply mean and toxic. You don't want that at the center of your life. So take the steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Make the covenant with God. Ask for God's help, and then open yourself to the bidding of the Spirit. I promise you. I just want this so much for everybody that listens to this podcast or that I have the chance to talk to in person. I want for you what I have discovered and am discovering. It's a whole new life that I'm living. I'm 63 years old, a brand new life that I'm living because I finally figured out how to take Satan and the evil that is done in this world out of the center of my life and put Christ where He belongs. For me, that process was by discerning, how do you actually forgive? What does it mean when Jesus tells us to forgive our enemies as we want to be forgiven? Well, this is what it means. You make a covenant with God, restore God into the center of your life, and then pursue. It brings you closer to God. When you're closer to God, you begin to see the beauty that surrounds you in your relationships and in this world, and life becomes a whole new thing. Okay, so next podcast, we'll talk about the fourth step of forgiveness, which is making the decision to renew the relationship or release the relationship or limit the relationship. We'll talk about what that means and give some real life examples so that you can kind of understand what choices you have within those parameters and what choices you don't because of circumstances. I do hope that if this podcast is meaningful to you, if it at least intrigues you, and I'm talking about things in a way that maybe you haven't experienced before, I hope that you'll act on what we're talking about. It's free to give it a try. If it fails for you, then you're free to go back to revenging and being angry, whatever it is you want to be, or to find another way to forgive. And if you try it and it is good for you, I do hope that you will share this podcast with other people in your life when you see them burdened and beaten down by the actions other folks have taken in their life. If you begin to taste the freedom that this podcast is dedicated to bringing to you, please make sure that in response you share it with other people. We welcome your comments and stories of success, whatever it might be that you want to communicate. Be a decent human being. If you're going to comment and disagree, it's fine to disagree. Just be graceful about it. We'd like to have a channel that is full of grace. So God bless you. I really and truly pray for everybody who sees this podcast that you'll respond to it, that you give it a try, that you'll find out what we're talking about and discover how true and how beautiful it is. I'll be back next week with step 4 of the forgiveness challenge, and that is renew, release the relationship. God bless you. Thanks.